So the EU subsidy probe takes a turn for the better. And this is, of course, very, very good news. The way I interpret it is very good news. All right. So for a while, we were all concerned about the EU subsidy probe. People were concerned that NIO is going to be affected as well. And NIO has said that they would be open to cooperation if that's necessary. Now, there's several aspects to this, but quite recently, this article broke out, and in it, it says that the EU is investigating BMW for Chinese-made iX3s that's being exported around the world. That caught my attention because I thought, and most of you guys probably all thought, that the investigation are Chinese companies with Chinese-made EVs being sold in Europe, perhaps at a cheaper price, but it's actually not cheaper. But this actually tells us that the focus is more on those German brands, and perhaps the intention of these probes is not so much, are you over subsidizing the car, but more like, why are you putting the jobs over there in China when you're a German company? You should be building the cars here in Germany. That's the feeling I'm getting from this whole thing, because at the end of the day, they got nothing on NIO, to be honest, because NIO's cars in Europe are more expensive than the cars in China, because of course you have shipping costs, you have all the different logistical costs that they have to deal with in Europe, the operational cost, the human labor is much more expensive in Europe than in China. So it makes absolutely no sense for European NIOs to be cheaper than Chinese NIOs. A lot of you guys have complained that it's overpriced in Europe. I think it's fairly priced compared to its competitors, and what NIO offers is quite good compared to its competitors. I'd say it's worth the money, but it is absolutely not cheap. And I'm actually going to commend NIO management for making the right move of not only having sales, but rental, lease, and subscription over there in Europe. So many ways to get yourself a NIO without actually buying the car. Like the co-founder said after NIO Tech Day, that NIO's actual results in Europe are 4 times what the sales numbers are. So taking that for what it's worth, they sold 800 some vehicles in first half of 2023. So they probably in total have about 3,000-ish people driving NIOs over there in Europe. That's a pretty good result, all right? And obviously having all these ways of getting a NIO gives NIO the flexibility, of course, that if the EU says that you're subsidizing cars and you can't sell the cars, well, you got 3 other channels to get customers their vehicles. Now, do I think that NIO is being subsidized by the government, their vehicles, the ones being exported to Germany? Because quite recently, you've seen so many of those articles and videos online about those mass EV graveyards, whether it's BYD cars or any other cars. You know, those EVs over there parked forever, and there's bushes growing out of it. And undeniably, those cars are for getting government subsidy. But there's something that you guys got to know. All right, first of all, national EV subsidy here in China has ended at the end of 2022. That's why we saw a overall difficulty in sales slump and price war in 2023. That's part of the reason. But then reason number 2 is that NIO always passes on the savings to the consumer. When I bought my NIO, my EV, all right, there was around 30,000 RMB in subsidy. It was a very good time to buy a NIO. Of course, free battery swap, unlimited warranty, and EV subsidy. I mean, like, of course, China was going hard on promoting EV sales. But the way it works is that discount is, of course, first applied by NIO to the customer, so the customer pays less for that money. And then afterwards, after the sale is done, then NIO applies for the subsidy from the government. That's how that used to work. But now there's no more national EV subsidy. There's like some local subsidies, but local subsidies, it's like you have to live in that area to get that subsidy. Like a district in Shanghai, Jiading district has some subsidies. Some other places have subsidies, and it always comes after the sale, all right? It comes after the sale. So with all those reasons combined, I do not think that NIO is being subsidized by the government whatsoever, by China, when it's selling cars to Europe. Now, another not so pleasant way to think about this is if they were subsidized, then of course NIO wouldn't be losing that much money. So in that aspect, I think they're grasping at straws here, and there's really nothing that they can get their hands on. And in my personal opinion, with this whole EV subsidy bullshit that they're looking into NIO and all these EV companies that are selling in Europe, I think it's more like a bullying tactic, because for the first time ever, NIO, BYD, a lot of these other companies are threatening the status quo. Germany's dominance in the automobile market. As we shift into EVs, more people are buying Teslas and BYDs and NIOs. I mean, Mercedes and Audi, their EVs are pretty much being wiped out here in China. Nobody's buying them. The appeal isn't there. And people know that, oh, for gasoline vehicles, sure, I'll buy your car. Your technology is good with gasoline vehicles because you got hundreds of years of experience making engines and stuff. But when it comes to EVs, you guys have absolutely no experience. And customers know that. They know that for EV, a luxury EV, if I want a good vehicle, I don't buy a Mercedes. I don't buy Audi. BMW, that's a little bit different because they do a ton of price cuts and their cars are actually okay-ish. I've seen the iX a couple times and my wife is like, whoa, that car looks good. So there is some appeal to that. So they have like 20-ish% market share of the luxury EV segment, but NIO has 50%. So this whole thing is the EU feeling threatened. They're feeling, for the first time, endangered of being left behind and becoming second place, whereas China becomes first place in terms of cars, in terms of EVs. And they got to do something to block that, to block the success of China. Same thing that the Americans do, same thing that the US does. If you get too successful, Huawei gets too successful, ban you. Or you got to put a hammer down. So I seriously doubt that they're going to get anything on NIO for this and through this sole subsidy probe. And in my personal opinion, the cars going to Europe are not subsidized. All right. They are exempt from Chinese taxes. All right. But that doesn't count as subsidy. If you're exporting something and not selling it here domestically in China, it makes sense for it to be exempt from Chinese taxes. But of course, NIO also pays value-added tax over there in Europe. So they got nothing. They got nothing. At the end of the day, I wouldn't be too concerned about this whole subsidy probe. There's not that much meat to the bone, all right? And they're focused on BMW. I can't even believe this. BMW can't take a break, man. You know, this whole thing was supposed to help out domestic brands in Germany like BMW, Mercedes, and Audi, but they've turned the gun. So we just got to keep an eye out for this. Very interesting stuff. As always, stay safe, stay healthy. Peace out.